All right, let's head over now to a very special guest here. We've got Melissa Ohden, and she is the founder and director of the Abortion Survivors Network and the Abortion Survivors Network Education and Policy Center. And Melissa, how are you?
I'm well. I am coming to you from my hotel room in DC. I got in last
All
night,
right.
did some press conferences, saw former Vice President Pence today, met with senators as they were preparing to talk about their support of the Dobbs case on the floor today. So I apologize, but it's a good day to come to you from a hotel room.
Yeah, no problem at all. And we've talked a lot about the ins and outs of it. As you said, former Vice President Pence, issuing some strong statements on this case, this upcoming case, and we've talked about the ins and outs of the legality and what's coming. But you're a living, breathing example of why cases like this matter. So why don't we start and tell a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. I am one of the babies who have lived to tell their story of a failed abortion. I am 44 years old. We'll just get that little minor detail out of the way. But it's important as we talk about the Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton decisions because my birth mother was forced to have an abortion not long after abortion was legalized here in the United States. My birth
Mm.
mother, fits most statistics when it comes to abortion, being 19, a college student, unmarried to my biological father. And, sadly, we also know she fits the statistic of being forced to have the abortion that was meant to end my life and forever changed hers. It's never pleasant to hear about what an abortion procedure entails, but I'll share a little bit about that with you. The procedure that I survived that was forced upon my birth mother was a saline infusion abortion, and it involved injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding me in the womb. Usually, the procedure lasted about 72 hours, but we actually know through my medical records that I soaked in that toxic salt solution for 5 days. They, of course,
Mm.
believed that the abortion would be successful. And that fifth day of the abortion procedure, they induced my birth mother's labor, believing I would be a successful abortion. And lo and behold, I was accidentally born alive that day.
I mean, wow. And I mean, I've heard your story before, and I've often wondered, hearing you tell it again, so many people might, remain quiet about their story or hold it in. You've decided to share this story and not only share it, but to be an advocate for others. What made you make that choice to be so open in sharing this story and really, building a ministry out of that?
Definitely the grace of God. I'm the first person to tell people I'm a pretty private person, believe it or not. and I love that God has pushed me out of my comfort zone and really given me the strength to share his story with the world because my life is a miracle over and over again. And so I've been involved in pro-life ministry now for, almost 15 years. And, people used to ask me, do you think abortion will end in your lifetime? And I used to say, not mine, maybe my children's. But I have every hope that Roe versus Wade is going to be righted by this case.
Yeah, and you have such a powerful testimony, and I think a lot of times people hear these stories and they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to relate because I mean, your experience is a miraculous experience, and it's one that a lot of people have no bearing and no way to relate. So, how have you found best ways to communicate with people who are maybe on the undecided side or even on the pro-choice side? How have you effectively communicated your faith and your pro-life views to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people, you may not be able to relate to what it's like to survive an abortion, but hopefully you can relate to me on a human level. Yes, I'm somebody who survived an abortion, but guess what? I'm somebody's mom. I'm somebody's
Mm.
wife, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's friend. And I think when we couch things in those terms, that helps to solidify the humanity on either side of the issue. And it bridges the humanity to the child in the womb. I'm the same person now that I was in the womb. I'm just in a different stage of development. And I even said that to members of Congress back in June of this year. I testified against the Women's Health Protection Act, which, wasn't protecting women's health at all. It was about advancing abortion. And I really begged them that question of, seeing their humanity and mine, that they're the same person in development, just in a different stage of development, just like me.
How did finding out about your story impact you? I mean, that's something I've always wondered. I've never had a chance to ask you because we talk so much about the amazing story and the miracle that you are, but how did finding that info out impact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Finding out that you survived a failed abortion is a pretty painful experience. I mean, that would be putting it lightly. I knew at the age of 14 when I accidentally found out my survival story, I knew that God had a purpose and a plan for me. I could feel it in my soul, but it was incredibly painful. Whether you find out at 14 or you're in your 70s, which some survivors do find out when, their parent is on their deathbed or their grandparent is on their deathbed and they're sharing these family secrets. It's very painful because we live in this culture that has, deemed lives like mine the dreaded complication of abortion. We live in a country where we can't even be in our hotel room right now without knowing that there are people outside on the sidewalk chanting for the very act that was supposed to end our lives to be upheld. It is a very difficult experience, and our culture really piles on the shame and embarrassment that so many survivors feel. And so, yeah, I definitely felt shame and embarrassment and guilt for surviving, mixed with this incredible purpose that I knew God had a plan for me. Most survivors really struggle with rejection. We're born into it, no matter what circumstances our birth mothers were facing at the time. We feel stress emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. There's just so much that we're still unpacking, and that's really part of our mission at the Abortion Survivors Network, is to heal abortion survivors and families who have experienced failed abortions and really start to educate the public about who we are.
What do you think it is? You mentioned just kind of the horror of abortion and obviously your personal story there. And I often think about it, from a biblical perspective. We can look back at Old Testament stories and think, how could they do such a thing? And I feel like abortion is the thing in our modern times that, if we were a Bible story, right, our generation right now, if like hundreds of years from now, they'd look back and say, how in the world did they let that happen? What do you think it is that causes people to be so accepting of abortion?
We hear those arguments, don't we, in our culture that say, this is how it's always been, this is how it's always going to be. And we know that this is not God's plan for us. This is not God's plan for the world. God intended for life. And it's really that human broken condition, I truly believe, that has led us to this place. And, what an incredibly sad state of affairs we have faced in the United States. And really what's happened in the United States, we know that, other countries have looked to us for an example. And so, I have every hope because I know, and it makes me emotional, I know that God has ordained this time for each and every one of us and the members of the court. And I know that when we see a change here in our court, and yes, it gets kicked back to the states, other countries and state by state, they're going to look for an example. And so what an important time for each and every one of us to be that example. This is what God is calling us to be and do.
So what's your you mentioned you were a little bit hopeful here early on in in our conversation, and as you watch these events unfold and this case is approaching, there's other cases going on around the country. What's your outlook here and your optimism and your hope as far as what's going to happen in this case and maybe beyond?
We've definitely seen it from about 2019 here into 2021. We know that a lot of the aggressive abortion legislation that was sweeping the nation, think New York, Virginia, Massachusetts, North Carolina, when they were even stripping protections for children like me who survive failed abortions, that was definitely a posturing for what the abortion lobby and industry and those politicians knowing that a day like this could come. And so they have been on the defense for quite some time, fearful of Roe versus Wade falling. So I think, I hope that people find encouragement in that, because I do, seeing what that was really all about. And so I have every hope that when we finally get this decision in the spring, that it will be the undoing of Roe versus Wade and really set into motion what you've heard time and time again today, that this will get kicked back to the states. And that, as we're pending the Texas Heartbeat Bill ruling, we have many important cases that the court is considering. And, there have been, I think I heard 500 different pieces of pro-life legislation in the last year alone that have been introduced. It's hope upon hope upon hope. And, lest we think that this is all political, to really echo what you heard in the last segment, this is also about each and every one of us doing what we are called to do every single day to make a difference in the lives of the women and the men and the children that we encounter.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback off of what you're just saying there. So much of this is drowned out often, it seems, by political noise. We've already seen one senator, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, has said that if this doesn't go the way she wants it to go, if it doesn't go the pro-choice direction, it will mean revolution. So they're already foreshadowing as some sort of that this is all a political issue and is not an issue about life. How do you push through that and talk about the issue of life and say, because a lot of people will say, well, you've got an incremental victory, why not be happy with that? And you can say, well, still lives are being lost even with a small victory. So how do you communicate that effectively?
We talked a little bit about this at a press conference this morning, and it was such a good lesson for us all. We need the measure of the court to be changed, because unfortunately, as people really are responding to messaging, we know how powerful those messages from the top really are. And so until the people have reason, we need to have laws that communicate the importance of life. And so many people don't even understand really the basics of what Roe and Doe really opened themselves to. And so, I think this is a great opportunity for people to have a really important conversation and an opportunity to learn about what those cases did, what the state of abortion is in the United States. There was just more information put out today about the increase in abortions in 2019, and the fact that chemical abortions now account for, I think it was 43.7% of abortions. Yeah. This is not something that is settled law, and it's influencing lives every single day, taking lives like mine, impacting generations to come. So this is not a time where it's just political. This is affecting everyday lives, and it's being played out on the political spectrum.
Why do you think it is that this issue, it seems to have a diverse array of people? You have atheists, you have feminists, you have people like yourself. What do you think it is that draws all these different types of people together for this one issue?
It's the tie that binds us, which is humanity. All of us can and should be able to relate to the plight of the preborn child, because that's where we came from. And so I would hope that people would look at the speakers at the rally tomorrow, which I'll be there. I hope people look at the diversity of those speakers and recognize that really that is humanity. That is the thread and the tie that binds us all. And isn't there a lesson to be taken from that?
If you had somebody in front of you right now who was on the fence, right? And we talked about this a little earlier, but on the fence, they're listening to your story and you have a chance to move them in some way, what would you say to them?
There's so much I would like to say. You have a birthday, right? You have a birthday, and I have a day that I now celebrate as my birthday, which happens to be the day that I was accidentally born alive. What is the difference between you and me? Why is it that other people can have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but we have a whole population of people who are still denied that right? And then if they're accidentally born alive, they are shamed, ridiculed, still not recognized under the law, and not given any opportunity by and large in the mainstream media to have a voice.
Wow, powerfully said, Melissa, and really appreciate you stopping by here to give your story, and appreciate all the work that you're doing, and over there as founder and director of the Abortion Survivors Network. And God bless you for all you're doing, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.